Jonathan, are we on? Oh, nobody gave me a countdown. It's okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mayor Pat Fuel, and if you're watching at home, we welcome you to the third Coffee with Council session. And for those of you who have filled our council chambers, we appreciate having you here. This is our third Coffee with Council, and I want to thank you all for coming, and also thank all those people who submitted questions online. We're hoping this can be an open discussion where you're able to ask questions that matter to you. We also have staff here to answer more specific questions that you might have. And if we can't answer your question today, we will definitely get you contact information and get you an answer as soon as we can. Before we get started, we have a couple of housekeeping items that we need to take care of. The question and answer session of today's Coffee with Council will be live streamed and posted on YouTube. This will allow members of the public who were unable to attend today be able to listen to this discussion. However, since we are live streaming this meeting, we ask that you refrain from discussing private or confidential information, including any resident's contact information, name, phone number, email, address, etc. And that's just to protect privacy. And if you have a question, please raise your hand and we will bring a microphone to you. And we want to try to get to as many questions as possible. So you'll also see us referring to questions that were submitted online. And so we'll try to alternate in a fashion that makes it workable and fair to everyone who has questions. So please be as concise as possible when you do ask a question, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. And Councillor Montgomery is going to kick us off with a question that we had related to wildfires.
Thank you. So we received a question regarding the wildfires in northern Alberta and what will the town be doing, or what are we doing to support those areas that are dealing with forest fires. So last week, I believe it was, the town actually sent up some resources to help with those. Thanks. So, for instance, the town of Strathmore is assisting with the devastating fires burning west of Edmonton, and to aid with ongoing fire control efforts, the Strathmore Fire Department has dispatched 2 of our firefighters, which I'm not sure if it's in addition to incident management team personnel, and then also we've sent several pallets of emergency social services supplies. And our team is ready to dispatch more resources in the coming days if required, including additional personnel and a water tender. Resources are being dispatched in conjunction with the Chestermere Fire Department, who, as some of you might know, we recently brought them into the agreement that the Strathmore Fire Department and other regional fire departments are all a partnership part of. And so we've sent some resources up with Chestermere. And so there's a note here that mentions something important, I think. And so it mentions how when disaster strikes, it often requires more resources to tackle than what's available locally. And so this is something that I've seen kind of developing during my time on council over the last handful of years. And that is the emergency management community is just becoming more robust. And ours especially is always ready to lend a helping hand to our fellow first aid responders and to regional partners. But also, as this demonstrates, not just regional partners, but even other communities around the province, which is great. You know, and I know for sure that when Strathmore, or if Strathmore ever runs into any sort of issues, we'll be able to count on our neighbors. And finally, I just wanted to thank all the firefighters from Strathmore, but also from around the province. And even, you know what, I noticed that there's firefighters that are coming even from the United States to help deal with this. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for their hard work and for keeping everyone safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Before we go to the audience for our first question, we have a second question here that was sent in to us, and Councillor Mitzner is going to be tackling this question regarding the town's budget process.
Okay, so we want to let the public know that council has an open concept, so if you have any considerations, concerns, it can be brought to council through Coffee with Council public comments during council meetings, delegations, contacting council. There's the contact information on the town's website, and residents are always welcome to contact administration through the CCF.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. And I just want to reinforce what Councillor Mitzner just said. We have a relatively new CAO, Kevin Scoble, who comes to us from St. Albert. He and his senior leadership team have really worked hard to come up with what we feel is the best budgeting process we've ever been involved in. It's the most clear, it's the most easily understood, and it has the most options for people to become involved in. So in all my 13 years on council, this is the most transparent budgeting process I've ever been involved in. We have people that can, well, it's open to the public as far as observing the session, so you can see some of the deliberations that are going on, and then of course the council meetings are broadcast live, and people have the ability to contact us, or if they have a question during the public comment section of our meetings, they can speak. So it's very, very transparent. So I'll go now to the audience. If there's a question from our audience here, we'll kind of alternate back and forth between online questions and from the crowd as well.
Hello, and thanks for holding this. I really appreciate the ability to speak to councillors directly. When you talk about the live stream, I'm just curious why the comments are turned off, because I think some really valuable, like instant kind of gut reaction, spontaneous feedback might be really useful. And if someone perhaps got negative or said malicious sort of comments, you can just silence them? Is that a thought or consideration for council? Because I have watched, I'm one of the 3 that watches live, and I just have thought, oh, I wonder if they've thought of this, or if this has been a consideration. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts, or if you've tried that in the past, or...
We haven't tried it yet to have online and
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So just for clarification, so you're saying like during the council meetings, those live streams, and so you're saying like that it would be administration that would be kind of monitoring the feedback and then somehow feeding that back to council in some way?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about the logistics of it, but I know that the comments are turned off, and if there is an ability to comment for the public in general, I think that would be useful for councillors to know that, something is very positively looked at or negatively, just for kind of instant feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, my only comments would be we'd want to mirror what's actually going on in the council meetings. So, for example, people in the audience can't just ask questions at any time in the meeting. They have to wait till the public comment section. That way the meeting is more structured and it's more, you want to have a controlled, formal meeting so that people aren't calling out things at all times. That can become an unruly situation. So I think if you had it real time with people's comments, there would be that risk of again, there's that worry of people making inappropriate comments and disrupting the meeting in a way, because whatever is said, even if it's in print, it affects people in this room. So I'd be a little bit concerned about that. The other thing is, and I don't know how this works, but I don't know if people observing the live stream, maybe Scott or Jonathan, you could answer this. Are their names identified? So I think people are more careful what they say when they know that their real name is there. But if they were, if they had like a tag name or something, an anonymous name or a different name they might use on Facebook, there would be that real protection for them, and they would remain private and can say basically what they want. But I think people have to remember that you need to have respectful comments too, and if someone's got an alias, it's a lot easier to say something really, really shocking or powerful that could affect everybody. So I would defer a little bit to people in our comms department as far as how they would approach that.
Yeah, I can speak not on legislation, but I'll pass it over to Kara. She'll have more insight on that. YouTube is the only channel that we have where comments aren't shown. partly as Carol will go into detail of what that means. When somebody does, if we did have it live and someone commented, we would want to relay that to council, but the only problem is that council meetings aren't set up like that. There are ways that you can interact within a council meeting with council. One of those is through submitting a delegation request. They'll go into more detail on that. But we're also available through Facebook. All of our comment sections are open, available to comment on. All of our videos we post on Facebook are open to comment on. You can email us, direct message us. Each councillor has their phone and email address posted online as well. They will be able to give better insight though on the legislation part, because meetings are very formalized.
Before I give it to Kara, the one thing I would also add, I think the mayor touched on it too, is we do have public comments on our agenda. So if you do see the agenda and have anything that you want to comment on, you're more than welcome to submit it to our team, and we'll make sure it goes to council as a part of the agenda packet. Part of the issue though too with the live streaming comments is just for capacity and workload. We only have a couple staff members here for council meetings just because they're in the evening. And it might be difficult for us at all times to be policing those comments and relaying them back in live time. So that may just be another consideration.
That's literally what I was going to say.
Okay.
Or even if there was a possibility to have those comments just submitted directly to council, that they could look at the end of the meeting and see, well,
Sorry.
Thank
I
you.
do that.
And see what's relevant or what's useful. And then you can get back to those people, just so that, I don't know, I just feel like, oh, I'd love to participate when it's going on. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
and it's not, I don't think we should, change policy to avoid malicious
Right.
comments,
Yeah.
right? Because you might be missing out on all the great comments that might be really valuable to the community, so.
Yeah, I think that's valid, and we could look at them after a meeting. I'd be a little worried if it was real-time comments that are just coming out, like that are being seen and seen by us as well. I've only had one situation as a mayor where someone in the audience became unruly and started to, in a public meeting that was being broadcast, started to single out staff members' names and started to make comments to them pretty nasty. So we were really close to having that person removed. And I would just hate for that to happen in an online setting. I think we all know what Facebook can be like sometimes, so I'd be a little bit worried. But yeah, I think your idea of having those questions available to us right at the end of a meeting, we could then respond in a timely manner by the next meeting, or even reach out to the person the next day. So that's a good point.
And I guess the last piece is that when it's live, there isn't really huge viewership. Usually when I'm on there, there's like 3 of us. So most of us are pretty, conscientious people that are watching. So that's just
and
my
that's a
last
good point too.
Yeah.
We can definitely consider it, and then maybe look at those questions coming to us at the end of a meeting or the very next morning. That would be good.
Super. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll go to an online question and we can go back to the audience. We've received the following question. I have seen residents walking along George Freeman on the shoulder of the road. This is a safety concern as the shoulders aren't that big. Will the town be completing the bike path on George Freeman all the way to either Brent Boulevard or even 244, which is Stampede Avenue now? We named it in honor of the Ag Society Stampede that is such a huge part of Strathmore. So I'll give you some information on that, and right now the town is looking at improvements to the pedestrian network, and the location is definitely a good one. And I just wanted to point out that there is a stretch of paved pathway from Park Lane Drive to the entrance into the ranch shopping area where the Source is and Original Joe's. And I just wanted to acknowledge, Councillor Sobel was really big on pushing for that, and we were able to get that one in from the ranch, from Park Lane Drive to the ranch shopping area. But what probably would have been necessary years ago was to try to have developers building those areas in the Aspen area and even into this Grand Point area where the pathway goes, where there is no pathway. There could have been some help from the past developers, because usually if a company or a person is developing a subdivision, we try to make sure that they also put in pathways, and that way the town isn't having to spend everything to put a pathway in that could be done or partially done by a builder to share the costs. So it's on our radar. We know that George Freeman Trail is high on the list of the priorities as far as a walking path. On the opposite side of the street, there is a pathway from George Freeman School, but I know that doesn't help people on the other side, and I know a lot of people walk to get groceries or ride a bike. So we have it on our list of things in the future. We're just not 100% sure when it can be done, and obviously funding is a pretty important factor in that, because the paved pathways definitely are not cheap. They do require a great deal of work. But it's on our radar, definitely, and we hope to look at it at some time in the future. It's definitely on our list of things. Any more questions from the audience at this time? We can definitely take some more. And if there are none, we can keep going like this with our councillors. And if you happen to think of one, we'll always alternate back and forth so that people get a chance to ask questions. Teresa has a question, I think.
Yeah, I turn off on to Center Street there, or not Center, Centennial Street. What is that thing? That's a stop sign. What is that? They put it in, I don't know.
Oh, the one at the east end of Centennial going on to George Freeman?
Yes.
I'm not a huge traffic expert. I thought that was put in as a way to protect pedestrians who were crossing from the pathway to the pathway in Cambridge Glen. I think it was a way of allowing more visibility for the pedestrians and to have the vehicles. I know it kind of involves a bit of a bump out, but I think it was designed to help protect pedestrians and to give more visibility in that area. But I don't know, Jamie, are you familiar with that section of road?
We can take that away and we can answer. I think the mayor was kind of correct, but I'll take that away and answer that.
Okay.
Does that help, Teresa?
It was just one day it wasn't there, and then
Yeah.
a couple days later it's there. My husband said, "What's that for?" I said,
Yeah,
"I don't know. I
I
guess I can't see the stop sign."
I think it was in response to trying to make sure the pedestrians were safe being able to cross there. Because if you're on that pathway that goes right behind Grand Point
Yeah.
Estates, it's a bit down and then you come up. So I think there was the worry about visibility for pedestrians.
Yeah.
But Jamie will be able to get you an answer for sure.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. I'll turn now to Councillor Montgomery, who's going to tackle our fourth question. Oh, sorry, this is Councillor Mitzner. You were wanting to take a look at number 4?
Oh, it's okay.
There is a physician shortage in the town of Strathmore. What is the town doing to ensure residents have access to necessary medical services? And we need to be clear that health is a provincial responsibility at the beginning. Medical services is an advocate priority for the town of Strathmore. The town has written several letters to AHS and the Minister of Health regarding both the physician shortage and the need for more diagnostic equipment. Health is under provincial jurisdiction, so we actively advocating to the province on this issue. The town meets regularly with the local physicians and is working to identify unique and innovative opportunities to attract and retain physicians as opposed to competing in the same arena as other communities. Unfortunately, this is an ongoing issue that most of Canada is dealing with. We are not only the only community that is impacted by the current physician shortage. However, we continue to look for potential solutions. And just recently, we have been notified that Valley Medical Clinic has secured an additional doctor. So that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. We'll turn now to Councillor Montgomery, who's going to address question number 5 that's come in to us.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, if I could just ask administration, so when we do our budget process next time, if you guys could actually provide an estimate, let's say, for doing the pathway from, I think it's Centennial up to, let's say, Brent Boulevard, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so the question has to do with how is the town working to make housing more affordable in Strathmore? So the town only has a few levers that it can adjust or pull, let's say, to affect housing in Strathmore. A lot of times these these are kind of like a lot of the factors that affect housing are out of the town's control. But things that we do have control on are things like the permitting process. So the town has been working over the last number of years to streamline and make more efficient the permitting process, as well, like just all the way from like development permits to building permits, and we've also been looking for ways to reduce costs for things even like inspections and the cost that has for the town. The other thing that we've been doing is, it is one of our strategic priorities to make living affordable in Strathmore, and so that obviously would include something like housing being more affordable. So the town's been working with developers to bring on more product, let's say, and has been we've been looking quite far down the road, I would say, compared to some of my early years on council, where it was kind of more looking at, or it was more reacting, I would say, even than kind of proactive. And so now we are actually taking a lot of proactive movements, let's say, and so we've done things like, as I said, like reducing the cost of reducing the time it takes to do permitting, and other just kind of red tape like that. And we've been advocating as well. Like we've spent some focus of our advocacy efforts towards housing as well, and making housing more affordable, at least keeping that on the radar. And I guess I'll turn to administration as well, to add anything that I'm not kind of doing a very good job explaining.
You did fine. If I could add something just before Jamie takes over. One of the things we've done too is increase the density of some of the areas of Strathmore and more a wide variety of types of housing. So, for example, we brought in a couple of councils ago, a couple of terms ago, more R1N1 lots, so that you could have more smaller lots in a subdivision, in addition to regular sized lots and multi-unit housing. And that's to try to ward off the urban sprawl where you take up more farmland and you spread out more by having big lots. So we've tried to do a mixture of those. I think if people were watching council meetings, or a meeting maybe a month or so ago, we did have a developer come regarding the seed cleaning plant site on Centennial Drive. And there were some residents who came who had some concerns, and we got them to maybe reconsider some of the things they had in their design. So we're expecting that one to come back to us sometime in July, I believe. But anyway, that's going to hopefully have some multi-unit housing. We also worked with the zoning in the downtown area to create more density in the downtown area, more people living down here, and that way they would support the downtown businesses as well. So we do have it in our plans as far as a lot of affordable living spaces, and we're working with developers. Oh, and Councillor Mitzner has a really good point. We've also looked at making it easier for people who have homes that have detached garages, that open onto alleys. You can actually bring the garage up to proper code for housing, and you could rent out a double detached garage as a secondary suite that you could rent out. And that would be good if a young family bought an older lot or older home with a detached garage. Maybe they would put a little extra into developing that garage. It could bring in rental revenue, and then that can go to help them pay their mortgage down, and they can get established and build equity in their home. And it could also keep seniors in their home longer. If they have a detached garage and they want to develop it and, again, bring it up to code, they could have renters there, so you'd have other people living right on your property. It's a good way to kind of keep track of seniors in their homes. Brings in more revenue where they can afford to stay in their home longer. And it's a way to create more housing for people who are looking for rental. And we know rental housing in Strathmore is really tight, so we're always looking at ways to attract developers, and there are things on the horizon. And I can turn to Jamie. Did you want to weigh in?
Sure. Councillor Montgomery and the mayor have mentioned most of the things we're doing. The one piece I would add is maybe in the next couple of years, hopefully early next year, late this year, bringing forward some changes to our new municipal development plan. So that will contain some policies, stronger policies, hopefully around creating more housing choices for new development as well as minimum densities as well. And the other piece is we're always talking with not-for-profits in terms of partnership ideas, whether that's land, finances, processes to assist them in providing more housing choices.
Yeah, that's really good, Jamie. Thanks for adding that. And if I could just come back briefly to those garden suites or those garages that are developed. These have been done successfully in places like Vancouver and in my old hometown of Canmore, where they've got established homes where they can develop those garage suites. People might say, well, you have so much land here in Strathmore. Why are you worried about developing the garages? The problem is it's really hard to find affordable places to rent. And we also do want to address what I mentioned earlier, and that is that urban sprawl into farmland. So if we can help people stay in their homes longer or get established as a new homeowner, that garden suite using a detached garage could be a good option as well. Any other questions? Any further questions from the audience? I haven't gone to you for a little while. So if you have another question, we'd love to hear it.
When you were talking about further governance over rent and the ability to rent and develop in Strathmore, I'm just wondering, would there be any possibility of governance for rent capping? Because that's really what seems to be the problem right now. The rent keeps increasing, and it's pushing people that are perhaps limited budgets, on age, special needs. It's really a challenge. So I'm just wondering, is there any policy that the municipality has as far as capping rent? Thank you.
So we haven't discussed anything like that. And so my personal understanding of that situation is that rent prices are a lot of times just a reflection of the supply of housing. And when the cost of something goes up, you are more likely to have new people or new businesses enter into that marketplace in order to take advantage of those high profit margins, let's say. If you were to artificially suppress the profit that would be available in those situations, you would see people avoiding investing into that particular industry or marketplace. And so there's been kind of a number of instances in the past where governments have done things like that, like whether it's like rent controls or even just price caps on things like gasoline. And what ends up happening is, you can cap the price, but it would diminish the supply. You would see less, and we wouldn't see any new rent. So right now, with the fact that there's a lot of high rent prices right now due to the lack of supply, there are, like for instance, as the mayor mentioned, we've been approached by a developer that wants to build just strictly rental units on this piece of property in town. And if we were to say, okay, well, we're capping the amount that you could charge for rent, they would say, okay, well, we're not going to actually rent these out. We're just going to sell them as homes. And so you would actually end up causing, and this is just my kind of personal opinion based on what I've seen and learned, you would end up just basically, you would create a situation where you wouldn't actually end up fixing the problem. You would actually just be just kind of changing the problem essentially, and you would still have people that wouldn't be able to access housing. It doesn't matter if housing is $1,000. If there's no housing, available, then you're going to be homeless, whether it's $1,000 or $2,000. So the best thing that we can do is to essentially just kind of get out of the way, or at least facilitate the development of new housing. And then when the supply is increased enough, then the price for that will necessarily come down as well.
Yeah, and we're really trying to encourage that there is more supply. So our staff and our senior leadership team is always working with planning to ensure that when builders do come in, red tape's reduced, they can get their projects going in a timely, efficient way so that it's good for them financially and it's good for the town as far as creating more housing. So it's one of the factors in our strategic plan. It's one of the 6 items to have affordable living. So we definitely are working on it, and we have this one group coming hopefully back to us in June or July. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, we're trying to encourage more builders and developers to be a part of creating more housing options, and that will definitely help the rent. Right now, it's supply and demand, and there isn't as much affordable units available, so the prices unfortunately have gone up, but I'm not sure rent caps is something that we can really do at this time. We're not a really big town either, as far as like a city has so many units that they can address. A question from Teresa?
Well, and just to something else I'll mention too is we're actually kind of in a bad situation right now in that we have a lot of businesses that want to hire new people. Our labor market is extremely tight as is because there isn't a lot of kind of free labor, but then there isn't even enough really housing to bring in new people. So we're kind of in this like crunch right now where there's not enough housing, not enough labor for businesses, and so it's like which one's going to give first? We can't bring in the new labor without having the housing, and like the house. So basically, the housing has to come first, and in order for that to happen, we need private money, developers to see Strathmore as a good investment and to want to put their money here because they believe that they'll get the return that they can expect.
And in a previous council, we did a lot of work to have better zoning and bylaws concerning legal suites in basements. So in the past, there were often illegal suites. Now we're trying to mandate and control that a bit better so that there are protections for people who are looking for rentals, and so that everything is up to code. A basement unit is safe and it's up to the current standards. Those kinds of things we've done as well to try to encourage people to possibly who might want to rent out their basement suite, to make sure that it's a safe and healthy environment for renters. And if suites like that come on stream, it becomes it helps with that supply problem, and it hopefully will help with the rental prices. The more units we can try to attract in town, the better it's going to be, because we do know that a lot of people are struggling to find good places to rent that are safe and healthy. Teresa?
That company you were talking about there, whenever, a month or two ago, I was listening to it, because I lived there. And the main problem right now is cul-de-sac that's there, okay? You got some people from number, 8? They come and visit people in number 8. They park on that cul-de-sac. Number 7, we have visitor parking, but when they park their second vehicle, they're parking in the cul-de-sac, like they're doing now, and that's what they're having a lot of problem with now.
Yeah.
Which, like there's one vehicle that's been there for 6 months. It just goes from one side to the other. Nobody's done anything about it.
Well, I think we're hopeful that the new design that's coming to us will address any parking concerns. I can't say much about it because it hasn't come to us yet, but the developers have contacted the town, and they say they have a better designed plan, and we'll hope to see it, and then when council sees it and the public have a chance to make comments about it, we can hopefully address that, and maybe that will become one of the things that adds more units for rent. So, and hopefully it'll take care of some of the parking stresses too.
Yeah, and that's actually one of those issues where you've identified where we need to make sure we find that balance, and even we can say, like, for instance, I think we say that any new units have to have 1.5 parking spaces per unit. But then, so we don't actually control the number of cars people have, right? So we can set the rules that we want, but, that doesn't kind of a lot of times reflect reality. So that's why it's more important than ever as we go forward to make sure that the developments we are approving are not going to have these, foreseeable, but, unintended kind of, spillover consequences that you're referring to.
And if I could just circle back to the original question. So I would say at this time, we're not looking at rent caps, but we are working really hard to attract developments. And once a developer comes, we're trying to make sure, and our planning department has done an incredible job of reducing red tape. They've made a lot of changes. A lot of our builders and developers are really happy with our planning department. So if we can encourage developers, and when they come to us with a plan, we can be as receptive as we can. And then once they start to work in the process, if we can be as efficient and timely and help them develop their projects, that's going to get more units on stream, and that extra supply is going to help with the rent prices. But we know it's important, and that's why we have it as one of our 6 points in our strategic plan. And this first development that hopefully is coming back to us in July maybe, we're hopeful that if it's an improved thing, we can take a real good look at it, and maybe it might become the next thing that's happening for Strathmore. But we'll see what they bring us to council. But we are working on it for sure. On a related note, the town received the following question: can the town encourage legacy families, farmers, entrepreneurs, and et cetera, to invest in affordable rental properties for their community through things like provide property tax exemptions for affordable rentals, long-term deferrals of development fees and charges, height density incentives, and inclusionary zoning? And I can tell you that seat cleaning plant on Centennial was owned by a cooperative of people, and they were very, very interested in finding a builder developer who would help with affordable housing. So there is the CMHC is involved potentially in that, and this is a group of people. It deals with this question number 6 is it deals with it directly because they've gone out of their way as a cooperative to try to encourage a developer who's going to bring rental properties to town. So again, we're excited about that, but we're waiting to see what the new design is. Hopefully it'll come out all right. If you've been down Lakeside Boulevard, you'll see that that across west and across from Kinsman Park, there's a tall apartment building. That's another one that's brought on some units. I think they're units for sale. Is that correct, Councillor Mitzer? So those are units that are for sale. So from an approval process and zoning and development, we're trying to encourage more density in the downtown area, especially. I went to a couple of conferences when I was elected in 2010 during the election campaign. There was one of the main campaign points that people were really, really worried about was the number of buildings that were empty downtown. There were sometimes absentee landlords, and different units in the downtown business buildings were empty. So I went to a couple of conferences on downtown revitalization, and one of the first things that I remembered distinctly was the speakers were saying, if you want to save a downtown, you have to have rental units, you have to have residents first, and then the retail business will follow that. So we really worked hard at creating more, we changed the zoning to allow for more multi-unit housing downtown. I think you've seen lots of 4plexes and 6plexes pop up, that apartment building. There's also one near the senior center, there's a tall apartment building. That was all part of our plan to try to save downtown. And we did that, and we also improved 2nd and 3rd Avenues, tried to beautify those 2 streets. And then the third part of our plan was to actually bring town offices downtown so that we could bring staff downtown. Staff might, on their lunch hour, go to a downtown business, maybe mail something or pick up a prescription or do a little shopping in one of the downtown stores, maybe go for lunch in a cafe or a coffee shop. Those are all things that we actually had a plan, and we wanted to have all those things done so that we could have more people living downtown. And that's all a part of trying to attract investment and building all throughout Strathmore. But there are opportunities for people in business or long-time farming families if they want to invest. I know in the past, back in the 80s, there were some of these buildings that were developed by people who lived in a community for a long time. And I'm thinking like Hilton Plaza, a couple of the Chinook buildings that started off a lot of multi-unit housing. And they were ahead of their time, these people, because they put that downtown. When I first came here 40 years ago, in 1983, my first apartment was in the Chinook 3. I had a little bachelor suite, and they were brand new buildings then. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening in Strathmore. We're aware of the housing situation, and we really want to try to do things to encourage more building. That's the number one priority for us, and our planning department has been really, really instrumental in making that an easy process for our builders and developers.
Yeah, and just even like just to touch on that as well, it's important to remember. I think that you know, affordable housing isn't necessarily the target that we want. Affordable housing is almost like a symptom or a result of a healthy housing supply. We could build quote unquote affordable properties, or incentivize developers to, for instance, like with the development that's going where the sea cleaning plant is. According to CMHC rules, which is the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, they're going to technically be affordable units, but they're actually still going to be, from my understanding, affordable to the CMHC is charging like, $1,700 or $1,800 a month, which is a lot, but that's by their standards, that's affordable housing. And to me that's expensive, and so, but what that will do is that's going to actually just kind of increase the total supply. So yeah, they'll be able to charge their $1,700 or $1,800 or more, even if people are willing to pay that. But the people that are now charging, like let's say $1,000 or $1,100 or $1,200, they're going to be competing with those units as well. And so then you're going to see like just the total supply increasing will cause the price everywhere to drop. So even if we're not building, or even if developers aren't necessarily targeting affordable housing, there's a reason why, for instance, like bedrooms right now in Strathmore are renting out for $800 a month, because there's just nothing, so if there was more units just across the board, then you wouldn't see bedrooms going for $800 a month, right? So I like the idea of incentivizing where necessary. I'll tell you right now, though, with like some of the economic activity that's going on and will be going on in the Strathmore area in the coming years, I think that there's going to probably be a lot of developers that are going to want to be taking advantage of this economic activity. And so we're actually going to see, I think, the housing supply skyrocket in the next number of years. So it's just a matter of time. The next question has to do with de Havilland, and so that's just kind of in line with what I was just saying. So as some of you might know, de Havilland is an aircraft manufacturer that's purchased some land outside of the town, or out in Wheatland County, and they are planning on building a very, very big manufacturing plant. And their plans, my understanding is their plans are also to do a lot of local sourcing, either within Alberta, within Canada, and within the region as well. So we should see a lot of economic boon from that. But at the same time, there's kind of the pressures that go along with that. Like there's going to be a lot of people moving into the area, which is going to, kind of exacerbate some of those housing issues that we were talking about. It will have positive effects, though, for things like the town of Strathmore. But also there is cost to the town of Strathmore as well. There's growing pains, I guess you could say. So one of the things I'll talk about is Strathmore's residential to non-residential tax ratio. Currently it's about 80 to 20, which means that for every $100 of diesel, for instance, that we put into a sanding truck, in the winter, Strathmore residents are paying about $80 of that, and businesses in the town are paying about $20 for that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just it's a reflection of our current kind of tax ratio. We are trying to move that to recognize that the businesses so there is a cost, as I mentioned, to businesses being in the region, and so we are trying to adjust things to reflect and kind of balance that. More industrialized regions, for instance, in Alberta, like in Edmonton, the ratio is more like 65-35, and Fort McMurray has to achieve the provincial cap on non-residential taxation of 80%, and they used to be at 95%, I guess. And so residents up there pay about $20 of the cost, 20 out of that $100 for diesel. And something else I guess that's worth noting is we're not looking to we earlier in like the last term, we were looking at, kind of it was like, how do we increase the amount that businesses are paying relative to the residents? And so we were saying, okay, well, what about if we just increase the tax rates, like proportionally to increase more on businesses? This current council and administration actually has been looking more at how can we increase the amount of industrial and non-residential businesses in town. It's like if we grow that part of the tax base, then it just proportionally will reduce the amount that residents are paying. So that's been our focus lately. And then also, there's a number of other issues that we have to deal with as well. Like there's kind of like, as I mentioned, the social issues, that, there's the housing issues, and then there's just other kind of, like there's gonna be pressures on other social services that we provide. Let's see here.
And if I could jump in just for a sec, Councillor Councillor Montgomery. Oh boy. I was really excited to be called to a meeting with the de Havilland Housing Department. So there's like a section that deals with housing for their development, and they had they wanted to get a sense of what Strathmore needs, and so I basically was able to explain that we needed a wide variety of housing in Strathmore. We need good residential lots for people who might be in the upper salaries in the de Havilland Corporation for this airplane plant. We also need rental property, because you're going to have young staff too working, and they're not necessarily going to be able to afford a big executive lot with a big home. They need something to get themselves started, as every young person in Strathmore needs, is to be able to get some firm footing and start working. In fact, Councillor Mitzner was our first realtor in Strathmore, and that goes back. Well, you were only 17. I don't know. You were like a wonderkind. You got a realtor license, I think, when you were in grade 6. So we were really, we got to work with her many years ago and we were a starting out couple who needed to find something that we could afford. And so we were working with Councillor Mitzner on a home, and the rest is history. But yeah, the de Havilland group came, their housing section came, and we talked about all the different types of housing we need. There could be people on staff living in an R1N1 home. There could be some rental units that are available. It could be upper end properties. But all of those things will hopefully be coming down our way. We have other developers and builders who I always want to call you Councillor Scoble. CAO Scoble and I met with some of the developers of subdivisions, and they've told us, and I don't necessarily want to put pressure on them by identifying them and where their properties are, but they've told us that their next phases are already sold out. So they're ready and willing to start developing more properties, and that's going to be happening, we hope, in the near future. But again, they're working with our planning department, and our planning department has been positive, upbeat, efficient, and it's going to do a lot to bring more housing in. And again, we're trying to bring the residential taxes closer to the non-residential as far as the percentage split of who's paying the taxes in the town of Strathmore. We think that in the past it's been a little bit too heavy on the side of residential, paying a proportion of the tax in town. And so we're trying to bring commercial up, but it's a balancing act, because we don't want to hurt businesses either. We don't want to suddenly jack up the commercial tax rate, and then some businesses find it hard to survive, or they have to raise their prices then to deal with the tax rate. So we're trying to find that balancing act to bring up non-residential closer to residential, so it's a better split. But we also want to do that in guarded and efficient and measured ways, so that nobody's getting hurt. And I think it's going to be really, really good for the town if we can get it closer to that average of 70-30 that we're looking for, so that it's not too painful for residential, for people owning their own lots and properties and homes. It's not too hard on them to finance and fund the town through taxes. Finish up?
Yeah, well, and I just want to also, I'll mention that, so this is high on our list of priorities, and we've been working with regional partners such as Wheatland County, for instance, to we foresee these issues, that are coming kind of down the road, basically, and we're being proactive, and we're not just waiting to kind of react when the problem arrives. We're looking far out, and we're taking steps now to avoid basically getting slammed with, some of the problems that we're already facing from just the pressures we are. So I would say, I'm comfortable, I think, with where things are and with the direction of administration as well. Administration, this is, they know a lot about this kind of stuff, and they're taking steps to ameliorate any sort of issues that we're facing from it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Mitzner. Any other questions from the gallery? Councillor Montgomery. What did I call you? Councillor Montgomery. Man, you think that's a sign that things aren't...
When it comes to development of Strathmore and everything, I'm interested in hearing what's up with 5G. I hear it in the media once in a while, and there are some pretty significant health issues that can be related to that. I've been watching the National Citizens Inquiry, and I hope that everyone else has been doing that as well, because it's a real deep dive into some of the concerns that communities have faced in the past 2 years regarding COVID and the pandemic. And there was a really learned individual on there, a professor, that spoke about 5G damage. And I'm just wondering, when you speak of development, do we have plans for 5G in Strathmore at all?
I'm under the impression that right now, there is 5G in town. So when I looked into this, a couple years ago or so, when 5G was kind of being rolled out, I learned that it's actually under the purview basically of the federal government, because they control where these towers go and what is on the towers even. So unfortunately, it's out of the hands of municipal government or even provincial government a lot of times. So I would say that, yeah, it'd be you should definitely be talking to our federal representatives about this issue. And I'll be honest, I only know a little bit about 5G and so I can't comment personally about the whole health kind of side of it. My understanding is that there are some parts of that spectrum that have not actually been kind of tested long term to kind of prove the safetiness or the safety of it. So I think it is something that we should be aware of and be kind of monitoring. And I certainly think the federal government needs to be careful about rolling out new technologies like this and at least understanding where the problems might be with them.
So just to clarify, we already have 5G?
I'm under the impression that there is 5G in town already. Okay. I could be wrong, but we don't kind of get reports about that per se, but I'm under the impression. So
that would be Martin Shields then that I would direct a question to?
Yeah, Martin Shields would be the federal guy. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, we have to find that balance because, for example, several of our businesses have reached out to us to improve the broadband service so that can help them with their businesses economically and have a better, for things like paying online and paying by debit at their stores. Some of the companies and businesses have wanted to have improved broadband. So our senior leadership team, our CAO, has been in talks with different internet providers. So again, is that balance between new technology and also making sure that the best broadband is available for our residents and businesses. I don't know a great deal about 5G. I know that the password to our internet at my house has 5G at the end of it. So I'm thinking we have 5G, but I don't have a lot of knowledge about 5G at all. I'm sorry, but yeah, Martin Shields would be a great resource person to contact as far as that. And he's very responsive. He'll get back to you, or his staff will reach out to you.
Yeah, my understanding is that it depends where it's placed, and it shouldn't be near individuals, right? Like homes and such. So that would be my question. So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any further questions in the audience? Scott, do we have any submissions online during this? Have you seen any, or do we have that?
All our submissions were advanced.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of the online questions that were submitted, and if there are no further questions from our audience, I guess we can wrap up. Do any of the councilors want to have parting comments or wrap-up comments?
I'll just say thank you very much for coming today and for the questions. I really appreciate the questions, and I like your idea about the feedback. Like, that's why we're doing this type of thing, is because we do want feedback from people. So hopefully we can figure out some way to incorporate your idea.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
asking a lot of
okay.
questions. We had some challenges with snow removal this year, and we were on Park Lane Drive. And I'm just wondering, because we were blocked in, right? And there were some potential health concerns, right, with people that are on oxygen and might need medical assistance quickly. We were advised from people from the town to pay to have private companies come and clear our driveways after the town had blocked us in. And I don't really think that that's maybe perhaps the best outcome for the intentions of clearing the road, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering.
If I could, I'll try to answer some of this, and Jamie, if you're available to weigh in, if you need to add or correct anything I've said. The problem with snow removal, and this is in every town across Canada, it's pretty much done the same way unless the budget for snow removal is really raised. Because what happens is the snow plows, their job is to make sure that the road is clear. So when they plow it, to create the lane to drive in, the snow has to go somewhere. So it goes in front of everybody's driveway. And I know it's frustrating because all of us have that. My driveway I'll say it. My driveway on Strathmore Lakes Bend also had, they call them windrows or snow rows, but when it plows, it leaves that pile of snow in front of the driveway. The only way I think that could be stopped is when they plow the lane to make it clear for travel or more clear for travel, there would need to be another plow that would come behind and take away that windrow, but then you have twice the number of plows running, and if they take away that snow row or windrow, it's got to then go somewhere, so it would have to be trucked away. And I think that would be really, really costly. It would probably affect and probably really increase the snow removal budget, which then in turn would be a potential raise in costs or possibly even a tax rate adjustment, just because it's that much more expensive to get that snow out from everybody's driveways. And I know it's a problem. It's an age-old problem, and it's everywhere. You have to keep your driveways clear, I know, to get out. And I just don't know if we can address that without adding a lot of cost to the snow removal budget. Jamie, did you have anything that you wanted to add on that?
Sure. Just a couple of things. First, I want to apologize for the challenges you had. This was a tough winter. We had a lot of snow and not a lot of melting, so I do want to apologize for that on behalf of staff. The mayor's right. I mean, we are bringing a report to council in June that's looking at our policy and maybe some options to change it. But the mayor is correct that all those changes do come with some cost, but certainly we want to have a conversation with council about that, see if we can do better and how much they're willing to kind of adjust budgets to do that. So we look at it every year to see what we can adjust to make it better for homeowners. So thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just reemphasize, so many, we all live in Strathmore, so even councillors have that snow row in front of their driveways if they have driveways. So it's a problem we all face, but it's going to be one that if we want to address that on every street in Strathmore, it's going to cost a lot of money. I'm just not sure, and I'm really looking forward to the report from Jamie and his staff regarding snow removal. So hopefully we'll be able to get some more information. And again, with our meetings public and very transparent, hopefully at a coming meeting, you'll get some of the answers that you're looking for, or you'll have a better understanding of how it's come to be that way.
And it might just be a matter of altering the grader, right? Because I know in past years, the grader operator was, aware of what was happening, they would just lift the blade, right? So that the occupants, needed access to the driveways weren't impacted. So they would just lift the blade at every home that was impacted, because this isn't for everyone. This is just a number of homes that are on perhaps the south side, that we don't have the sun, and it's, the furrow was not small, right? So it was, if you have suggestions that might work for us, that would be great. But if it's just something minor, like lifting a blade, that's not very expensive, hopefully.
So I was just going to say, and the town staff is very responsive to, even if it's not directly spelled out in our policy, if there are kind of safety issues that you're seeing, or even if you have suggestions like that, you can contact the town administration through the website through something called the citizen communication form, and suggestions like that, or even just kind of bringing their attention to things like that, might be. You might be, as a resident, you're totally familiar with the situation, and so if you can provide that kind of perspective to administration, it helps them do their jobs better as well. So I can definitely say that they are interested in hearing that, and they will respond to stuff like that.
Thank you for your question. Seeing no other questions and nothing from home because they've already been submitted, on behalf of our Strathmore Town Council and our Town of Strathmore CAO and his senior leadership team, we'd like to thank you folks for coming in today. And for those of you who are at home with your Baileys and coffee, good on you. Thank you for being part of our online audience, and we'll be ready for another coffee with council in the not too distant future. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thanks administration for setting this up and for
Thank
coming.
you. We can jump to the podcast. I don't know, maybe.